signs. We have just words
Yeah.
on paper. When we started this process, we did not think that the AIDS Memorial that anything would happen to the AIDS Memorial. This was a park re-sign process, and we assumed that the AIDS Memorial and the Trans Memorial would just stay the same. As we consulted, we heard a lot more and more about the AIDS Memorial, how important it was, some of the issues that people are having with it, some of the things people wanted to see change within the park, with respect to the memorial, with respect to celebrating people with HIV, all of that stuff. And as we learned those things, we've been reaching out to more and more stakeholders to act, to Casey House, so many different stakeholders that we've been bringing into the fold. So we're trying our best. If there are people that we missed, as I've said, we will consult them. Like, let us know, and we'll bring them into the process, because there's no decisions being made here today, or no decisions have been made at all.
What's the average age of the people you've been consulting with?
I would have to go look for that data.
Okay, because I see that HIV health abuse listed.
Yeah. We've also gone to Gay Men's Coffee Night. We've also gone to Casey House.
How old are the men that go to that?
They're not my age. I don't know how old they are, I didn't ask them. But they're a range of ages.
You've been working on this for over a year, you said.
Yeah.
But there's some of us here, and this gentleman as well, who is saying, this is the first we're hearing of it. It should have been done, this meeting should have happened a year ago, and it could have saved a lot of time and heartache. It just didn't happen.
Daniel, how long have the signs been up in the park?
The signs have been up for a year.
For a year, yeah. So if you've been in that park in the past year, there are signs up.
Are they being updated in front of meetings that happen today?
That didn't happen.
And it should have happened. Should happen. That was saying enough to be really worldwide. It's a great opportunity to have today from our city staff who have to update that slide. We have to be a city of perhaps Councilman Boyce, Mr. Dredge, the city staff have left the room.
He did that in the water. He went to the water.
Have that slide.
Go ahead, please.
I have a few questions, I guess, I'd like to raise. First of all, I appreciate, and it's nice to hear from Oz elders in the room, but as the person who runs one of the two Oz youth groups that connected with Daniel and did a very long feedback session, I think we were probably there for over 2 hours. And just so you know, most of our clientele are BIPOC, most of them are new to the country in the past decade. A couple of straight ones in there too, and a couple of trans folks as well. It's really frustrating to see so many of you miss the opportunity that's in front of you right now, especially some of the seniors in the room. I'd like to bring you forward 40 years, and if you can picture this neighborhood, if you can stop talking and listen. I sat through 3 reminiscent periods, thank you.
Take it easy.
If I can take you forward 40 years, and if you can imagine what this neighborhood is going to look like in 40 years, how many of you, and I'd like to see a show of hands, how many of you feel that this will still be a majority queer neighborhood in 40 years from now? Please raise your hand.
Can you repeat the question?
How many of you feel that this will still be a majority queer neighborhood in 40 years from now? So I see no one's hand going up, so I'm going to assume that most of us don't feel, yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't go on. Just silence. One of
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we're chatting on the
just
side.
one. So they have to talk. And you know, one of the problems here is we're not thinking of people with hearing issues. Okay? So that might be
Would you let me
something
finish,
that you're.
or-
Well, I just want you to be.
I haven't interrupted
I
you
just-
at
And
any
this
point.
man
That's
is-
fine, you don't need to stand up.
Folks,
So-
I'm gonna have to interrupt this now. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
If we could maintain a respectful atmosphere, I would really appreciate that. Because I
said-
don't want to ask anyone to leave the room. So let's
The
be
meeting should
respectful
stop
to everyone.
attacking the senior people in the neighborhood and the room.
Hey, I'm the former executive director of PYO.
I wish you let them
Yeah,
finish.
I'd like a chance to bring you forward.
Yes.
So in 40 years from now, if you don't think this is going to be a queer majority neighborhood, I'd like to reiterate what we heard during the feedback session with Oz Youth. So these are people who are under 30, living with HIV, and what this memorial means to them, which is no.
Once he's done with you.
It doesn't mean anything to them. They are not able to connect with it emotionally. That's a tragedy. I agree with what you said.
Their
We
friends
need to
haven't
do a
done
better
it.
job of
That's because
educating
they
people,
didn't
young
know.
people, especially connecting with The problem is, I think a lot of people in the room are looking back in time towards what that meant to them and the loved ones they lost, rather than looking forward in time to what this memorial is going to look like when you're gone. If you were 50 today, you will be gone probably in that 40-year timeline that I just mentioned. So you should ask yourself, what?
Pardon? I can't hear this. So I'll be dead, is what you're saying.
So,
Right?
Yeah.
You know,
That's the entry, so I'll be dead.
probably, yeah.
Oh, wow, that's wonderful.
Do you want to actually participate, or do you want to just grant?
Why
Claudia.
don't I?
Claudia.
Daniel, please, let me finish. No one has spoken up for younger people in this room.
Anxiety, business and stuff.
I'm really sorry for that. I'd like you to try to imagine how you.
No, what you're asking us to imagine us being dead in 40 years.
I want you to imagine how you.
Okay, we're gonna stop this conversation.
And the
This is gonna
interesting
stop.
thing is, he's why, the reason I'm here. I find it intriguing as to why the young people want to have some connection with the memorial, why they want to either change it or build something different, or have something in another space and place. I think that's one of the revelations that came out of this whole community consultation over time. And I really want to know what the kids are thinking, and I really want to know if there's ways to accommodate, and if we just kind of take a breath, and maybe his presentation technique is a little rough at times, and that's fine, but if we could hear him out,
Well, we're
and
not.
if we could not talk back, I'd really appreciate it. I'd love to hear what he's got to say.
It's a different world. When I ran PYO, my clients were dying. Now they're not. So it's a different world.
Or you.
You've told us, why don't I just, and then we'll come to you. I'll just quickly tell you what the youth told us. They wanted to see themselves reflected in the memorial.
But that means
And their
nothing.
experience reflected in their memorial, which to them meant things like, maybe there's digital elements added to the park that are sharing images of people whose names are on the memorial, and people who are alive today.
I can talk for myself.
Yes.
Please. And I know it's rough up front, but if you let me get to the end, the ending point is I want all of you as my elders to be remembered and to be memorialized. And that's not happening with the current concrete pillar with a plaque on it. And I know a lot of people have a very strong emotional attachment to what it looks like now because that's what they remember. But I really encourage you, this is right now, this moment is when you have the city's ear. I'd encourage you to think of what it could be, how it could be elevated and activated. The memorial, not the park. A lot of people have been speaking about the park today. This meeting is for the memorial itself. If you can imagine how you want people to remember you and your friends and your activism when you're gone. That's what you need to be looking at, not necessarily about how you feel about it today, because if it doesn't look better, if people don't connect with it, in 40 years, when this is no longer your neighborhood, and the next round of park renovations comes around, it will be moved. It'll be moved off to some far corner of the city where people don't have to think about it. If you want it to stay around and mean something, you need to think about what it's going to look like. And I know it's really nice for people to talk about their connections to it and stuff, and to have these arguments about whether the park is safe or not and stuff like that. But this meeting's for the memorial. Talk about what you'd like to see done with it beyond it just being maintained. The only thing I've heard people say today is they want to stay clean. It could be so much more. You said things like completely redesign it. They said things like QR codes so you can actually interact with people's stories. You can learn more about their life, about their activism. You can scan a name and actually learn more about it.
It should show the history. To tell the story before the story disappears. Who knows? Who if you said Creever, who would nowadays go, oh, what's that? You know, I was on the ministerial council during Creever, so you know that these things need to be encompassed in the memorial. You're right, through presentations and ways so the history continues. Otherwise, it's all going to fade away.
And that is what enhanced the memorial could mean. It doesn't need to mean changing the memorial. It doesn't need to mean moving the memorial. It could just mean adding elements into the park that enhance the story that the memorial is telling. So I'll give this gentleman here an opportunity to speak, because he's been waiting very patiently.
Thank you. We're here to talk about difficult things, whether it's your question or somebody else's. They're all wrong. We somehow have to find a way to navigate through it and not stare away. And there tends to be that tendency to do that. That memorial is our cemetery for our dead people. Number one, you wouldn't think about moving a cemetery on Eglinton, for example, or any other place in the city. That would not cross anybody's mind. The discussion to do so is incredibly disrespectful. And yes, you've called upon people to ask for their opinion, but it's a difficult thing, number one. Number two, as he said, there needs to be relevance. It has to be current. It has to mean something for everybody. And in terms of his question, what are we going to do in 4 years from now? Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to answer some of those questions. We got business owners who are having a hard time because there's drug addicts here breaking windows and so forth and so on. If we don't deal with this, I don't see what the object is in trying to reinvent the wheel when we can't keep things going. There will be no community. It's not just that cemetery that's our community, it's this entire street, which is dwindling. The other issue is that we treat this, and this pisses me off to no end, because I'm HIV positive, and I've gone through hell. I've seen people die at the very beginning. I've seen people go through AZT, and I myself have gone through my own personal hell. I can tell you a story that make your toes curl. But at this point, we have this funny impression that HIV/AIDS is done. It's not done. It's on the rise with young children, with a number of different groups. And one of the reasons is because at one point in 2012, we decided to criminalize HIV. If you didn't disclose, you could go to jail, and I know a lot of people who did. People lied about their HIV status, and they didn't get tested because they didn't want to go there. What did that do? That caused HIV to go up for a period of time. It's back up again because the children don't know about what we went through. The education is not out there, and it should be. We're talking about, I'm sorry, I have nothing against trans, and I don't want someone to misinterpret this. When we talk about trans, well, we're not talking about HIV and how it's affecting young people today. They're thinking, oh, we have PrEP, we have all kinds of stuff, and we can just have all the sex we want kind of thing, but that's not how it works. The other issue that we have is this is a reminder, that memorial is a reminder. There are people out there who got married, and they had wills, and they had partners, and they were not able to go and see their dying partner in the hospital because the family did not allow. Yeah. We have, and they're having to fight. We have, at this point, after 15 years, HIV started in 80, we're now 2023. It is supposed to be that after 20 years, medication becomes generic. We're still paying $2,000, $3,000 for meds.
A month.
Sorry?
A month.
A month. Some of our gay men have gone in the poorhouse and are on the streets today because of that. Yeah. It's all okay, the government's paying for it. It's not okay. Because some people who are working, if they don't qualify for the assistance, have to have either an insurance plan or have to figure out a way of paying all that money, and most of them at some point succumb. So that memorial is everything, and I agree with the statement that was made, that we really need to look at the big picture. If we can't keep this memorial, if we can't keep it going and keep it live now, how do we think that redoing and spending all this money that is going to make a difference? We are a community now. We cannot forget that. We need to act together, work together, resolve the problem, and bring it to the next phase. Not bring the next phase and forget everything else. It's a continuum. And we need to grow together and fight together, talk together, discuss together, whatever it takes. But we have the ability to get this done. And the young and the old, and those who are not so sure, it's somewhere in between, we all need to work together. That's the bottom line. That's my 50 cents.
I apologize to you for my reaction, being MPHA. So I just want to apologize to you because I do agree with you. We should be thinking about the future, but don't erase the past. Like, we need to still remember funds, right?
Point was
And I
taken.
love your QR code, yeah, I love that.
But I'm still waiting for maybe Daniel could start calling names out of just popcorn side of it. I like physical ideas for the space. There's lots of long speeches and stuff, but this is your opportunity to talk about the physical memorial and ideas for it. So maybe someone could
I would just like to respond to your actually quite pompous insistence that people give ideas about how the monument can change. When we've heard many people say they don't want it to be changed. You may think that that's a wrong position. You may not agree with it, but people have not been suggesting changes in many cases because they don't want changes. I came to this meeting specifically because I read on the internet that HIV positive youth didn't feel that the AIDS Memorial resonated with them and they wanted something about hope and celebration of people who were living with HIV. And I asked those people, do you understand the concept of a memorial? It's not about people who are living with HIV. It's not about people who use the park. It's about specific named people who died of HIV or AIDS. But that's what the memorial is about. It's for the people who are already dead.
I totally agree. Do you have an idea that would better connect those two to those names on the memorial?
No, I don't. But I would look at the memorial and see who's actually in front of us, the names.
You know,
QR code is a good idea, but put it beside the memorial.
Yeah, nobody.
And
And absolutely, like I said, this doesn't have to be about changing the memorial itself. What we heard was that because the memorial, as it stands, doesn't resonate with those youth, they wanted to see other elements added to the park to complement the memorial. So they suggested things like lighting, additional lighting. They suggested things like digital screens sharing photos of people whose names are on the memorial, who are still alive, living and thriving with HIV, as opposed to just the names on the wall. So just want to make sure that everyone understands that we're not pushing a change to the memorial. We heard that there was some interest in it, and we're having a conversation about it, and the answer can absolutely be no. And we're hearing that it's no, absolutely. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, just quickly to piggyback off what Daniel was saying there. Parks and the team putting this presentation together brought me into the fold specifically in conversations about the memorial because advocating for maintaining the memorial as it exists now for Patrick's original design is my position at the city. So we don't make changes to public art and monuments without this type of conversation, and the default is always not to change it. So just to emphasize that if people don't want to change, that's not going to happen.
We had a quick vote. All in favor of not changing the memorial, raise your hand.
There's also a 45-story condo proposed for 200 meters of the memorial. That's going to fundamentally change the flow of the park.
yeah.
I cannot. That is a process that is outside of this one, managed by other people, and I can't speak to
I
that.
agree with that, but still, that's great that the park is fundamentally going to change the park. We should be having dialogues with them.
We are having dialogues with them. We're having dialogues with city planning about how that development's impact on the park can be mitigated and how the park can be improved as a result of that development. But it's not going to stop the development. Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, I mean, I think what this brings up for me is there's two different things happening here, I think. A master plan is about that build form, what's happening in the park, what's happening with the AIDS Memorial. A lot of the issues I'm hearing fall outside of that. And I think what that means for us, not for Daniel, but for us as a community and a neighborhood, is to recognize actually that we have a lot of work to do right here. Because what we don't actually have right now is a community structure to make decisions about how we want that memorial to be maintained. Not that we're asking the city to do X, Y, and Z, but we are demanding as a community that it's taken care of in a certain way. That we're having these types of community conversations as our community and going to the city, not with being asked to be consulted, but saying, this is actually our memorial, and here's what we expect, and here's what we want to happen. Similarly, when we talk about the broader park, that's a plan for the design. As I've said in every single one of these meetings, we're not going to design our way out of social problems. So are we not possibly at a moment in a really unique opportunity opportunity when we look at master plans to look at it not just in relation to the design of the project, but I'd rather knock $2 million off the design price, put it into an account for the neighborhood association and the BIA and ACT and PWA, and access it for the next 10 years to actually program that park in an effective way that makes people feel safer. Because what I'm hearing time and time again is that we all know that just the design aspect of this park isn't gonna fucking fly, because we're just gonna end up fighting about this again in 5 or 6 years. So how are we using this as an opportunity to leverage our voices as a community to ensure that that design element is actually paired with a programmatic element that reflects the realities of the neighborhood we're in now, and the realities that things are actually kind of getting worse and continuing to get worse. So how are we doing that? And I think that involves us continuing to have conversations like this, but also redeveloping some of those structures we used to have as a community. We don't have an AIDS Memorial Committee. We have a vigil committee, but we don't actually have a shared responsibility, a shared terms of reference. Nobody is responsible in this community right now for the AIDS Memorial in a meaningful way. And I think what this conversation shows is that we need to change that by the people around these tables and by the people who aren't at these tables, and not just rely on the city, but just like ourselves, because it's our moment.
All right.
Go ahead.
Hi, I just moved to the neighborhood, and I respond to kind of a question that you've been asking about, what we would like to see in the park. I've visited the park many times. I talked to some of you about the park, and some of the things I wrote down is a park history plaque. I think something that also makes the AIDS Memorial sign a little bit bigger on our Memorial Park plaque would be great. Also a trans memorial shop, because it's very easy to kind of just pass by it. And then I also wrote more benches. There's lots of benches kind of at the front entrance at Church Street. When you go back towards the memorial, there's one lonely trans painted bench. And so when I was visiting the memorial, I didn't feel like I had anywhere to really sit. And I did. I went and I walked up and I looked at those names. I saw the paint that was flaking off of them, but I could still read them. As a young person, I'm not afraid to go to the park. I very much enjoy going to the park, even if I'm the only one there that is from this community and is not some of these more marginalized groups that we've been discussing. So those are the things that I would like to see.
Thank you. We have time for one last comment.